The sharp winter wind stung her cheeks as she walked through the dimly lit streets, and her breath was felt in the cold air. There was something painfully familiar about the path. The cobblestones beneath her feet, the light of the street lamps casting elongated shadows on the sidewalk, and even the faint smell of wood smoke coming from distant chimneys. This was where she usually walked hand in hand with him, and the two of them would get lost in their own world, talking about everything and nothing. Carrie paused for a moment, leaning against the railing of a small bridge spanning a narrow stream. The water beneath her carried on determinedly, heedless of the obstacles in its path. She watched it, and her thoughts returned to the past she had left behind. 1.5 years, she thought. That was how long she had danced back and forth with him, hoping that he would change, that he would become what she had once thought he was: kind, sweet, compassionate, and loving. At first, those qualities had shone brightly. He was attentive, his laugh was infectious, and his eyes were kind. But over time, things changed. The warmth he once radiated seemed to cool, and his emotional presence began to wane. She could feel him drifting, emotionally unavailable, unwilling to take responsibility for his role in their conflicts. Each time she felt this distance, she left, hoping that her absence would make him realize what he was missing and inspire him to be the partner she needed. Each time she returned, the cycle repeated itself. It was the hope that things could be different that kept her tethered. She clung to the version of him she once knew and believed it was still out there somewhere, beneath the surface. But each return was met with disappointment. Eventually, Carrie had to face the truth. They were different people with different values, and he wasn't willing to go along with her. It was time to let him go. But letting go wasn't as easy as she hoped. A month after their final breakup, she spotted him in places she frequented. He stood in the corner, keeping his eyes on her. His presence was a disturbing reminder of their unfinished history. And then, between the many breakups, she learned the truth. A betrayal that shattered her trust not only in him, but in herself. A mutual acquaintance she trusted had swindled her friends and herself out of thousands of dollars. The scam, the betrayal, and the emotional blow had knocked her off balance. She went to the authorities, desperately hoping for justice. But when she called her ex to tell him, his indifference was another heartbreak. He didn't care, he wasn't interested. He only cared if they could be together again, as if everything else, her pain, her sense of loss, was inconsequential. Carrie sighed. The memories were still fresh, still hurt. She wanted him to understand, to care, to show her that she mattered. But it became clear that she had never really cared for him. Not in the way she needed, not in the way that made her feel loved and safe. She soon found herself seeking comfort in someone else's arms, someone who offered her the support she so desperately craved during that chaotic time. It was a hasty decision, an emotional lifeboat, but she needed it to stay afloat. A few months later, she found herself at an event she knew her ex would be attending. She stopped hiding, stopped avoiding places for fear of running into him. Willingly, they found themselves alone together, a moment she both dreaded and longed for. His question, spoken with such nonchalance, hit her in the gut. "When will we be together again?" Carrie took a deep breath, calming herself and giving her answer. "We won't," she said firmly. "I'm seeing someone else." She watched his face, waiting for some sign of understanding, some sign that he was willing to reflect on their past and acknowledge the pain they both endured. But there was nothing, just empty acceptance, as if it was all inevitable. Their last meeting had been brief and strange, the culmination of everything that had gone wrong. She'd gone to pick up what she'd left at his house, to see him one last time and close this chapter of her life. She still loved him no matter what, but knew he wasn't capable of being the partner she needed. She apologized, wanting to leave things on a positive note, wanting to believe that they could still be friends. But his response, accusing her of cheating on him, stunned her. The words cut deeply, the unfair accusation twisting the knife he'd already plunged into her heart. "Is that a threat?" she asked, her voice trembling. He denied it, but the damage was done. The trust, the love, the tenderness she still held for him shattered in an instant. She left his house in tears, angry and broken, knowing she could never look back. The months that followed were filled with emotions: grief, anger, confusion, and eventually acceptance. He moved forward quickly, or at least pretended to move. He met with other people, shared the story of their breakup with her cousin, and sent his friends to stalk her on social media. It felt like an intrusion, a cruel reminder that he wasn't ready to let her go completely. She severed relationships with everyone associated with him, cut them out of her life, but somehow his shadow still remained. Carrie began to question everything. Was it her fault? Could she have done more? Doubts gnawed at her. What ifs haunted her at night. She still thought about him every day, still loved the version of him she once knew. But in the quiet moments, when she allowed herself to be honest, she realized she'd made the right decision. He had never truly seen her, never truly understood her needs or her heart. And when she found out through a random app that he dated escort girls during their relationship, it was the last confirmation she needed. He'd never been capable of being the partner she deserved. Healing was a slow process. It came in waves, moments of clarity followed by moments of doubt. She missed him, the thought of him, the familiar comfort. But she also knew that what they had was not love, not anymore. It was a cycle of hope and disappointment, a constant struggle to be seen, to be heard, to matter. And she was tired of fighting. He started dating someone new, someone like her. It hurt to see him go so easily, to see him replace her with a version of himself. But now Carrie knew better. She knew that his actions, his choices, were not a reflection of her virtues. They were a reflection of him. His inability to be vulnerable, his unwillingness to take responsibility, his need to control the course of events. The nights were still the hardest when her thoughts went back to the past, to the good times they'd spent together. She remembered the laughter, the nightly conversations, the way he would put his arm around her when they watched movies together. It was in those moments that it was so hard to let him go. It was in those moments that she questioned if she had done the right thing. But then she remembered the pain, the betrayal, the way he made her feel small and insignificant. She remembered the tears, the sleepless nights, the feeling of being alone even when he was there for her. Carrie realized that letting him go was the only way to find herself again. She needed to learn to stand her ground, to find her worth outside of other people's approval. She needed to heal, to forgive herself for the mistakes she'd made, for staying when she should have left, for hoping when there was nothing left to hope for. The way forward was still uncertain. There were days when she felt strong, when she felt like she was finally moving forward, and there were days when the pain resurfaced again, when the memories threatened to pull her underwater. But she was learning to take things one day at a time, to be patient with herself, to allow herself to feel the pain without letting it consume her. Carrie looked up at the sky, at the stars twinkling above her, and took a deep breath. She was still healing, still trying to figure out who she was without him, but she was getting there. Slowly but surely she was learning to let go of the past, to forgive herself, to find peace in the knowledge that she had done the best she could. She loved with everything she had, and though it wasn't enough, it was healing for her. She turned away from the bridge and staggered away. The past was behind her. The chapter was over. The story no longer defined her. She was ready to write a new story where the hero would be herself, where she would find happiness and love not in someone else, but in herself. As she left, she felt a sense of freedom and lightness that she hadn't felt in a very long time. She finally let go of herself and her problems in her soul.